Hello, welcome to today's immigration tidbit. So there's a lot of different kinds of waivers in immigration law, and one such miscellaneous waiver is referred to as the Walsh waiver. Now, I've done some videos on this before, but I want to get into a little more detail about this. So just so you know, the genesis of this was Walsh, his child, ultimately was both sexually abused and worse. And he went on afterwards, crusade basically, to try to make it so that doesn't happen to anyone else in the future. Hence, the Walsh waiver is for U.S. citizens. It's the only waiver in immigration law that a U.S. citizen has to apply for. All the rest of them, every other one of them, is if you are applying to become a resident or you are applying for a non-immigrant visa, but not being a U.S. citizen. So this one, a U.S. citizen petitions someone in their family, okay? Normally, it comes into where a U.S. citizen petitions for a spouse, okay? That's the normal. It doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be another relation as well, and still this will apply, the Walsh waiver. But essentially, the way it works is, the U.S. citizen will petition the spouse, and then it'll go into immigration, and sure enough, immigration will find out that the U.S. citizen has a history, a criminal history of some kind of abuse with a minor, some kind of sexually related abuse to a minor. It doesn't have to be rape. It doesn't have to be sex. It can be anything even related to it. Okay, it could be distribution of child pornography. It can be false imprisonment. Okay, but it involves a minor. And when they find that out, they of course send the RFE, the request for evidence, and they say, okay, you, the U.S. citizen, do not qualify to petition your spouse. You will need to file a Walsh waiver. Okay. And what the Walsh waiver does, what the ultimate reasoning behind the Walsh waiver is such that the U.S. citizen is not going to be in danger, or sorry, not the U.S. citizen, sorry, the beneficiary is not going to be in danger should she come to the U.S. and be married to this guy. Okay, I mean, sometimes it's the spouse you have to show that. Sometimes there's a stepchild. Whatever it is, to the satisfaction of immigration, a Walsh waiver will show that for all intents purposes, there will be no risk to the people being petitioned. Okay? And of all the waivers in immigration law, this particular waiver is the most difficult. It really is the most difficult to get approved. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, because if it were impossible, there'd be no reason to have the waiver in the first place. Okay? So it is possible, it's just the burden is very high, meaning that you have to show, you the U.S. citizen, have to show all kinds of legal reasonings as to why you're not going to commit such a crime again, why the beneficiary, the spouse and or child coming in, stepchild, will not be in any risk. And so, how is it that you might be able to prove or to show that that is the case, that there won't be any risk? Well, first, the crime itself, okay? You have to analyze what the crime is, because sometimes you might be subject to the Walsh waiver, but it might not have anything in particularly specific to do with, a spouse or a stepchild coming in. Okay, let me give you sort of an example here. Somebody, does anybody, might be urinating on the side of the road, okay? And they might get convicted for that, indecent exposure. And after that, they're going to have to register as a sex offender. So you see where I'm going with this. That particular crime had absolutely nothing to do with a sex violation, yet they still have to register as a sex offender. So there are likewise different kinds of crimes that somebody, a U.S. citizen, might be convicted of, but don't translate into risk of sexual abuse for the beneficiary coming in. Okay, that's the first thing. Next, you want to look at the timeline between when this occurred and when you're petitioning. Okay, obviously, the longer that has passed, the better. So let's say this crime happened 20 years ago. I mean, you're still subject to the Walsh waiver. There's no statute of limitations there that says, after 22 years, you no longer have to do it. No, you still have to do it. But if you can show all the years that have passed and hopefully no other sex crimes with a minor, and hopefully no other crimes, period, then it looks better on you in that, it was a one-time thing and whatever happened, okay? But you have shown rehabilitation. So you want to show during all these years between when the crime occurred and now, there's been no other crimes. You've been gainfully employed. You possibly go to, church or synagogue or, mosque or wherever it is that you go. That you're a volunteer. That you're raising a family. That you already have kids. Okay, whatever it is. I mean, every case is different. That's why sometimes, people will go, okay, I need a Walsh waiver. Can I have it tomorrow? Okay, well, no, because it's very, very individualized per case. But that's how you can show rehabilitation through all of those means. But that's not all you need to show. Arguing how the crime might not be relevant to abuse, arguing how, you've been rehabilitated, then you should get some kind of psychological or psychiatric evaluation as to how you are no longer a risk to the incoming family members. And possibly an evaluation of why what happened in the past. Maybe the psychiatrist or psychologist has some reasonable explanation for it. It's unclear. But I usually attach such a report because, number one, they're qualified to make such an assessment. And two, they usually give a multi-page analysis of why. It's not just saying, he will not be a risk. Okay, it's not just saying that. It gets into an analysis of why. And then you're going to want to get letters of recommendation of your character. And this does not mean from your family, okay? Because you can do it from your family, but it doesn't carry a lot of weight because immigration will think your family will, write anything about you, anything nice. And if they don't write anything nice about you, you're not going to get an evaluation from them. So get it from employers, clergy, friends, things like that. And then once it's submitted, you of course have to wait to see if it'll be approved. On a side note, sometimes if the crime is such that the waiver is too difficult to get approved or it gets denied, then you have to switch gears and you have to look at the spouse, what she might qualify for, and have her immigrate separately without you. Okay, the bottom line is if she gets here, whether it's through you or through her. Okay, there you go on the Walsh waiver.